What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GM. It is your guy, Boulanger. Up next, Ravens versus Texans. Let's talk. The Baltimore Ravens are getting ready with all new everything going into week number 5 at home versus the Texans. Now, I haven't officially closed the book on last week's commentary, but it's Thursday. Week 5 kicks off tonight. So I thought, let me go ahead and talk about Texans and Ravens. Now, both of these teams seem to be in the same type of context, just like last week's game. Last week versus the Chiefs, the Ravens and Chiefs entered that game both at 1-2, both desperate for a win. The Chiefs came out, dominated. Ravens injuries did help, but we weren't going to win that game either way. And so now we move forward. And when we look at the Texans had fallen to 0-3. They got their first win last week. Now, they come into this game with a lot of injuries, just like us. Most of their players should be ready to go by Sunday. Most of our players may not be ready to go for a couple of weeks. So although we come into the game with the same record, the same position in our divisions, and a very similar position in the AFC, we seem to be in a more desperate situation. The division races for both of these teams. Pittsburgh right now, AFC North, I think they're 3-1. So they're basically 2 games up on the Ravens. When you jump over to the AFC South, the Indianapolis Colts are 3-1, getting their first loss this past week, but they're 2 games up on the Texans. So both teams are really desperate for this win. We kind of are in the same exact situation, right? And so, but what makes Sunday different is who's going to be under center. The Texans are going to enter this game with CJ Stroud, their third-year quarterback. They're going to enter this game with most of their starting offensive line. They're going to enter this game with some questions at wide receiver, and then they have some question marks as it pertains to health as far as their defense goes, right? The Baltimore Ravens have questions along the offensive line. When you think about the offensive line, Ronnie Stanley, Tyler Linderbaum, both had injury designations. When you look at the tight end spot for the Ravens, we don't know how full go Isaiah Likely will be. We don't know at the wide receiver position who's going to be ready to go. We know Devontae Walker has an injury designation. And then offensively, Lamar Jackson is out. And he will probably most certainly be out through the bye week. And so we absolutely come into this game at a deficit. Can we win this game? I think we possibly could. But I think it's going to be based on how well the coaching staff steps up. Now, you guys know I talked about Cooper Rush on 2 different occasions this past offseason, and everything that we had seen from him had been borderline trash. Wasn't good play at all. But now he's going to have a full opportunity to practice with the ones, whatever that is. So that's Zay, that's Bate, D-Hop, as it pertains to wide receivers, possibly Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. Of course, Derrick Henry, Justice Hill. And so he's going to get a full week to practice. So could he put on some type of performance like we saw him do in Dallas? Possibly. But then we jump to the defense side of the ball. What are we going to see from this defense? With guys like Nate Wiggins, Chidobe Awuzie both having injury designations, Roquan Smith. When you go to the trenches, we understand who is in and out down there. Madubuike out, Washington out, Travis Jones question mark. So if Travis Jones plays, who's going to suit up beside him? My preference is Okoye, but that's just me. When you look at, and then also Marlon Humphrey's out. So when you look at it, right, the Houston Texans have a chance to get right on this Baltimore Ravens team offensively, and they have an opportunity to tee off defensively. And so things look really bleak for the Baltimore Ravens right now. And I think this game in particular, of the 2 games before the bye week, if I got my schedule correct, Houston and then LA, this is the game I think is more likely that we could win. And I think that we could win this game if we use the quick pass and make a real push to run the ball. The Houston Texans are not stout in the middle necessarily. They're really good on the edge along the D-line, but they're not super stout in the middle. Now, they do have the 4th ranked defense in the whole league, so that says a whole lot for sure. And so I think this is one of those games where it's really time to see if the Ravens have any real character left, if the Ravens have any real morale left, right? We always talk about dogs. Oh, he's a dog and he's a dog and so on and so forth. But it's time to really see who's a dog for real, right? Even if you're coming off the practice squad, even if you just got signed, who's a dog for real? Who is really going to step into a starting lineup with everything that has gone wrong around the Ravens? Who's really going to step up? Because that's who you know isn't a real dog, a real ride or die. Everything about the Ravens right now is being tested. Defense is non-existent sometimes. Offense is hit or miss sometimes. And then you add all of the injuries. And so you come into week 5 with more questions than we have answers. But I think we'll get some things answered this week. And I think the real thing that we're going to be able to take away from week number 5 is if everything we've seen from these coordinators, Todd Monken offensively, Zach Orr defensively, if it's real or if it's been based on performance and scheme, right? Here's why I say it that way. The offense will have to shift. You cannot ask Cooper Rush to do anything like Lamar. You can't ask him to extend the play. You can't ask him to use escapability. Everything has to be on time. And so if you have to run an on-time offense, a more efficient offense, then the pass routes and concepts are going to have to also be not long developing, but short, punchy, snappy, crisp routes. On-time accurate passing. So it's really going to see, or we're really going to see if Todd Monken is really like that as a offense designer and play caller, or if everything we've seen from Lamar Jackson and the Todd Monken combo is more or less who he is. If he can't call a better game, if he can't design a better game plan to install Cooper Rush for at least 2 or 3 games, then that just says he's not the guy. That would just say Lamar Jackson has also been carrying him, just like he carried the former offensive coordinator, Greg Roman. Defensively, we're going to really see Zach Orr's genius or his impotence. We're going to really see. Because when you're down 6 or 7 starters, I know that backups and practice squad players are not the same level of talent a lot of times, or most times. But I think it's really going to show if Zach Orr can really scheme up something. And so I think without Lamar Jackson being the makeup for this team, right? The guy who covers all the ugly warts for this team, you're going to really see who's like that from coordinators, head coach, all the way down to players. Now, we already know about the head coach, and we already believe we got these coordinators figured out. But I think when you really have to coach because you don't have a do-it-all, cover-all type player, such as Lamar Jackson, it's going to really show your acumen. So that's what I think, man, is going to come out of week 5. Win or lose, I think that's what comes out of week 5 is what we really have in the stability and leadership of this team. Now, I've already said we don't have real leadership. But I think this week and the next week will also prove that. So listen, let me do a little housekeeping before I get out of here. Do me a quick favor. If you're here this long, hit like or subscribe. We are in full transition now. I've been talking about this name change once we got to 1,000. And so if you guys would hit that like button, if you guys would hit the subscribe button, if you've never subscribed, let's hit that 1,000 subscriber mark so we can get this name changed. We got a new look, a little bit of a new sound, but it's going to be the same honest commentary. I'm your guy, Bulon J, and I'm out.